Hello again, hope everyone's doing really well. Today I'm going to be doing my video in a bit of a Q&A format because I've got a couple questions recently that I think are really important and worth putting into a video rather than just replying to in comment form. So I'm just going to be going through two questions today, but if anyone else has more questions they'd like to ask, feel free to chuck them in the comment sections. I'd love to do a longer Q&A video in the future. But I think I'm going to get straight into the questions because they're really good ones. And the first one is related to card grading. So the question is from Lachlan Berry. And the question is, if card grading becomes more of a norm in the AFL world, do you expect CGA to be the main grading service, or will the American services win out? And I think this is a really good question because it brings a lot of things together. The first question it asked me is, will grading take off in general? And I think it will for a few reasons. Number one, the confidence it instills in buyers, knowing what kind of condition card you're getting. I think that's really important. The look of graded cards I think is really important, and I like it personally. I know lots of other people like it as well. The fact that it protects your cards and you know that they're not going to become in worse condition in the future. I think that's important. But most importantly, it gives you a price premium when you go to sell your card. And I think even if people don't care about the look of graded cards, if they don't care about condition that much, everyone cares about getting top dollar for their cards. So I think it's going to come in just because people will see if you've got a pristine card, and if you've got a card in your collection that's in perfect condition, you can send it in to a grading service and get maybe 1.5 to 3 times the value of it raw. And I think once people realize this, then it's really just going to incentivize everyone to send in certain cards for grading. But the second question this brings up for me is, what kind of cards are worth grading? Because just like I said in the last video, you can't pick any base card to grade. Well, it's the same with picking any card to grade. You can't just pick any kind of medium to high end and say, well, if I put this in a graded holder, then it's going to 2x or 3x in value. It just doesn't really work that way. You have to be quite selective in the cards you grade, in my opinion. And me personally, I'd only be grading 2 types of cards. And the first is high significance, low cost cards. For me, that's base rookies, rookie inserts, like cheap rookie inserts. And the reason for that is, like I said, high significance, but low rarity in those kind of cards. And by grading them, you bring the rarity up so that it becomes high significance and kind of medium rarity to have a pristine 10 version of a base rookie or a Champions rookie insert or something like that. So I think that's one card that will benefit greatly from grading, and you could see the kind of 2x or 5x, 10x moves even in certain cards once they're graded. The second type of card is the real high-end cards, and I think this is just because people want the best of the best. And if you've got a Dust Mine draft pick signature, well, there's 400 of them, so lots of people could have the same card. But if you've got a pristine 10 or a gem mint 10 Dust Mine draft pick signature, then you're going to be only one of one at the moment, probably, or one of a few in the future to have this kind of card. So it makes a rare card even more rare. And yeah, the top cards in the hobby, people always gravitate to them just because they're the best, and having it in perfect condition is kind of the best of the best. So that's why those come in. Now this is the point where I kind of split the question into 2 bits, because for the lower end cards, for the lower end high significance cards, I would send them definitely to CGA. This is because it's a lot cheaper at the moment, it's a lot quicker. You can get a card graded for $15 to $20 and come back in a couple months, whereas for the American services, you're going to be paying $100, $200, $300 and maybe getting it back in a few months or so. So it's high risk sending to America, especially. Well, it's just not worth it for the lower end cards. Like, you're never going to recoup that value, so you have to go to CGA. The other thing is, I really believe that Australian cards should be graded by Australian grading services. And in the future, I hope that all Australian cards can be graded by Australian grading services, just because they're Australian. It's an Australian sport. These companies know about the sport themselves and know the history of the cards, whereas American companies probably don't know anything about the sport, or the people grading the cards don't know the players or anything. So it doesn't sit exactly right with me that American graders would be grading Australian cards. But at the moment, like I said, the lower end cards would be going to CGA for me, but the higher end cards, I'm talking about the $1,000 plus cards, have to go to PSA and Beckett, just because they're more established, trusted, and historically they have a long history of doing this, so they're more respected in the marketplace. And I think it would be highly risky to send something like a Dustin Martin Draft Pick Signature to CGA, not because I don't trust CGA. I think they do a really good service, but they need a bit more longevity in them before I'd be trusting them with those higher end cards personally. So at the moment, so the question is, do you expect CGA to be the main grading service? Yes, for lower end cards, but the higher end cards I'd be sending to American Services every day, because you're going to get a much higher price premium if you got a Dustin Martin CGA 10 draft pick signature. You might get a 1.2 times price increase. So say it's $1,000, you might get $1,200 for it. But if it's a PSA 10, then you're probably looking at $3 to $5 grand. Like, it's a huge difference between the two, and it's worth much more in my eyes to spend the extra $100-200 and get it with the chance to get that huge price increase than to go with CGA. So in the future, like I said, I'm hoping all cards can go to CGA, but at the moment that's just not really the case. And the last thing on this question is, if you're sending these cards over to PSA and Beckett, I'd be very careful to see whether they're in high grade or not. Any cards with big dings, scratches, or anything of that nature, I wouldn't be sending, because if you don't get a 9 or a 10, you could probably get away with an 8 and still do pretty well, but anything lower than an 8, you'd be in a bit of trouble, and it just looks kind of bad, anything 7 or below. And these American companies, I think, probably grade a bit more strictly than CGA, so you just have to be really careful, especially when you're spending these big sums of money to get them graded, and also waiting a lot of time to get them shipped over and then shipped back. So I think that answers question 1 pretty well. Thanks for the question from Lachlan. And the next question is from Thomas Butters, who I've been talking to a lot recently. He's very passionate about the footy card industry and where it's going. There's lots of new ideas, which is great to see, and plans for his collection in the future. So his question is, what are your thoughts on the value of the copper draft pick signatures from Optimum, from the Optimum release, and comparing them to the dominant signatures, which were not also numbered to 175, and lots of these go for large sums of money, such as the Sam Walsh, the Bailey Smith, and the Matt Rao. I think this is a really good question as well, and important thing to think about more laterally in the footy card industry, because lots of people would say, well, look, a copper signature's out of 175 and the dominant signature's out of 175. Therefore they're the same rarity and they should be worth the same. But I don't think this is the case, because the copper signature is their 3rd best draft pick signature, these players, and for Sam Walsh, for example, their dominance draft pick signature is his best draft pick signature, is his number 1 rookie card, whereas the copper is their 3rd or even 4th, depending how you rank the Optimum Plus rookie parallel as well. And kind of what I was saying about the grading as well, collectors, especially higher end collectors, are looking for the best of the best, and the price, they don't shift in a linear fashion. It's like the CJ 10, 9 and 8 when I did the Dustin Martin rookie experiment. It's not like an 8's 60, a 9's 80, and then a 10's 100. It doesn't work in that linear kind of fashion. The top end cards get a big premium over the others. So, and I've seen on eBay that the platinum doesn't go for that much more than the gold, and the gold doesn't go for that much more than the copper. And I think people are really going to be caught out by this in the future, because they're thinking about it in a linear way, where 175 and then the gold's out of 95. So the gold should be a 3rd more expensive, or whatever that works out to. But it's not really the case. If it's their best card, this should get a huge premium over the other ones. And the copper DPS, unless they become a really big player in the AFL, I'd be worried. If they're in any way an average player, then people aren't really going to be looking for this. They're going to be looking for the players platinum, they're going to be looking for the gold, but the copper's kind of going to fall to the wayside unless they become a huge kind of player. And you can, for example, for Bailey Smith, if he had tiered draft pick signatures in the dominance release, and say he had 175 and then 1 out of 95 and then 1 out of 40, his draft pick signature out of 175 wouldn't be going for $400 or whatever it is going for now. It'd be going for less, and then more of the market share would be going to the lower numbered cards. So I hope I described that or explained that in a decent way, but kind of what I want to get across is it's not linear. It's not, you can't say compare cards in that way, because I compare them on what a player's best card is, not what it's numbered to. I would compare, say, the Sam Walsh with the Chris Judd, even though that's out of 225, with the Buddy Franklin, even though that's out of 600, it's still his best card, so it's the best one to compare it to. So I'd compare Jamara's Platinum to Buddy's draft pick signature, even though one's out of 40 and one's out of 600. So obviously the lower number is something to consider, and don't get me wrong, it does affect the price. If Buddy's was out of 40 instead of 600, it would be much higher in price, but it's more about what the best card is. It's not about the numbering of that card. So I hope I got that across okay, and I think I'll end the video there. Thanks for the questions, and I hope to answer some more in the future, and I'll see you guys next video. Cheers.